The four-star Admiral pointed a hardened finger. "Who the hell are you?" She had no rank, no file on his ship. But when his elite SEAL team filed in, a silent, chilling respect filled the room. They knew who held the real power. The Combat Information Center of the USS Dauntless hummed with the quiet, predatory energy of a machine built for one purpose: dominance. Banks of monitors glowed with tactical data, casting an ethereal blue light across the polished steel floor. This was the nerve center of Admiral Kincaid's task force, and he ran it with the unforgiving precision of a master watchmaker. Kincaid himself was a formidable presence, a burly man with a nose that looked like it had lost a few arguments with a boxer's fist and eyes that missed nothing, which is why his gaze locked onto the anomaly. She stood near a bulkhead, partially obscured by the shadow of a server rack, a ghost in his machine. She wasn't in uniform. Her dark hair, pulled back in a severe knot, was bisected by a single, stark streak of silver that seemed to absorb the ambient light. She was in her 30s, her face composed, her posture relaxed yet radiating a coiled stillness that set her apart from the crisp, uniformed officers who straightened reflexively under his stare. As the door hissed open, Commander Thorne, the SEAL Team CO, entered, followed by his men. They were titans, carved from grit and discipline, but as they filed in, their usual boisterous energy evaporated. One by one, they saw the woman. The chatter died. A wave of something profound and unspoken passed through them. Every single operator, from the newest breacher to the most seasoned veteran, gave her a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't just respect, it was deference. Kincaid's frown deepened. He jabbed a finger in her direction, his voice a low growl that cut through the CIC's hum. "Thorne, who the hell is she?" Commander Thorne, a man who didn't flinch from enemy fire, shifted his weight. "She's with us, Admiral." "A consultant." "A consultant?" Kincaid's voice dripped with incredulity. "This is a classified briefing for a direct action mission, not a corporate retreat. I want a name, rank, and security clearance." Now, before Thorne could formulate a response, the woman spoke. Her voice was low and even, devoid of any inflection, yet it commanded the room's full attention. "I don't have a rank, sir, and my name is Echo." "Echo?" Kincaid took a step forward. "That's not a name, that's a call sign. You don't have a rank, you don't have a file on my ship. You don't belong here." The tension in the room became a physical force. The junior officers held their breath. Just as Kincaid was about to order her removed, another voice, sharp and edged like flint, sliced through the silence. "With all due respect, Admiral," said Senior Chief Riley, stepping forward slightly. He was a lean, wiry man, his face a roadmap of old scars, and his call sign, Hex, tattooed subtly on his forearm. His eyes, hawk-like and intense, were fixed on Kincaid. "She belongs in this room more than any of us." The statement hung in the air, a direct challenge to the Admiral's authority. Kincaid's eyes narrowed, shifting from Hex's unflinching gaze to the enigmatic woman called Echo. The entire SEAL team stood behind Hex, a silent, unmovable wall of solidarity. Kincaid was a man used to absolute command, but he was also a veteran who recognized the unique ecosystem of a Tier 1 unit. He saw the profound, almost reverential way they looked at her, and a flicker of instinct told him he was on the edge of a mystery far deeper than a simple security breach. He let out a slow breath. "Fine, but I want answers, Thorne. After this." He turned his attention to the holographic display at the center of the room, but his mind was still on the ghost at the back of it. The holographic table flickered to life, projecting a stunningly detailed, three-dimensional model of their target. A decommissioned oil rig, codenamed Cerberus, squatting in the turbulent waters of the South China Sea. It was a metal leviathan, its rusted legs plunging into the dark depths, its superstructure a chaotic maze of gantries, pipes, and repurposed shipping containers. Intelligence reported it was now a fortress for a notorious pirate syndicate, a staging ground for raids on commercial shipping lanes. Inside, they held a high-value target, an engineer with critical knowledge of naval defense systems. "The plan is straightforward," Kincaid began, his voice regaining its authoritative rhythm as he traced a glowing red line on the hologram with his finger. Alpha Team will insert via 2 stealth ribs during the 0-200 squall. Approach from the west, using the storm front as acoustic and radar cover. Standard 5-point breach on the main platform. Secure the HVT and exfil before they can mount a defense. It's a clean, surgical strike. He looked around the table, expecting nods of agreement. The plan was textbook, meticulously crafted by his best strategists. The SEALs studied the model, their faces grim and focused. Thorne nodded slowly. "Looks solid, sir." But from the back of the room, a quiet voice disagreed. "It's a death trap." Every head turned. Echo had pushed herself off the bulkhead and stepped closer to the light, her eyes fixed on the holographic rig. She didn't look at the Admiral. She looked through the plan, seeing the fatal flaw no one else had. Kincaid's jaw tightened. "Explain yourself, consultant." The title was an insult. "Your approach vector," she said, her tone flat and analytical, "takes you directly over their primary listening array. The storm will cover your surface noise, but it won't hide your engine's magnetic signature or the pressure displacement of your hulls from the rig's passive sonar net. They're not just listening for boats. They're feeling for submarines. You'll cross 3 concentric sensor lines before you're within a click of the platform." She pointed to a section of the dark water on the hologram. "That's not an approach vector. It's a kill zone. They'll let you get close, then detonate the subsurface mines they've chained to the rig's legs." A chill went through the room. The level of detail was stunning, far beyond what their intelligence had provided. Kincaid stared at her, his skepticism warring with the cold, hard logic of her words. "And how could you possibly know that?" "Because I helped design the original security schematics for that platform when it was active," she stated simply, as if mentioning she'd once visited the place on holiday. The silence that followed was absolute. The officers exchanged shocked glances. Thorne looked down at the floor, a wry smile touching his lips. Hex Riley chose that moment to step forward again. His voice was low, meant for the Admiral but heard by all. "Sir, have you ever heard of Operation Sandviper?" Kincaid's head snapped toward him. "That's above your pay grade, Senior Chief. That operation is a ghost story, classified to a level that doesn't officially exist. The files are sealed." "The files are sealed because the mission was a catastrophic failure," Hex countered, his voice unwavering. "They sent in a full team to take down a warlord in a desert fortress. They were walking into a meat grinder. Intel was bad, the plan was flawed. They were compromised before they even hit the ground." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. 16 operators went in. Only 1 came back. He turned his gaze, and with it, the gaze of everyone in the room, toward the woman with the silver streak in her hair. "You're looking at the one," Hex said softly. Kincaid stared at Echo, truly seeing her for the first time. Not as an insubordinate consultant, but as a living legend. The ghost of Sandviper. He suddenly understood. This wasn't just about a mission plan anymore. This was about survival. The night was a suffocating blanket of black. The sea and sky merged into one churning void. The 2 stealth boats, low profile and painted a non-reflective matte, sliced through the waves with a low hum, their wakes quickly swallowed by the roiling water. The promised squall had arrived, lashing rain against the operators' faces. Inside, the SEALs were silent sentinels, their focus absolute. Echo sat in the lead boat, nestled between Hex and Commander Thorne. She wasn't looking at a screen or a map. Her eyes were closed, her head tilted slightly as if listening to a song only she could hear. The storm was their cover, but she was their guide. "Cut engines," she said suddenly, her voice calm amidst the howl of the wind. "Now." The pilot obeyed instantly. The boats went dead in the water, bobbing like corks in a violent sea. For a moment, there was only the sound of the storm. "The rig's main generator has a unique acoustic signature," she explained over the comms, her voice a steady presence in their ears. "A slight imbalance in the primary turbine. It creates a narrow cone of sonic interference directly to the southeast. A blind spot. The current will take us in from here." As she spoke, the boats began to drift, caught by the powerful current she had predicted. They were moving silently, inexorably, toward the colossal, skeletal legs of the oil rig. It loomed out of the darkness like a creature from the deep, its lights a faint, sickly yellow against the storm. They reached the base of a service ladder, rusted and slick with sea spray. 2 SEALs went up first, securing lines. Echo followed, moving with a fluid, weightless grace that defied the cumbersome gear and treacherous conditions. Her hands and feet found holds without hesitation, her body remembering a path it had traveled before in a different life. At the top, a heavy steel hatch blocked their way, secured by a thick, modern lock. Hex pulled out a set of breaching tools, but Echo waved him off. From a pouch on her belt, she produced a small, cylindrical device. It wasn't standard issue. She placed it over the lock mechanism. There was a low hum, a soft click, and the lock disengaged. Hydraulic punch, she murmured, pocketing the tool. Quiet. They slipped onto the lower deck, a labyrinth of pipes and machinery. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, salt, and diesel. Echo led them through the shadows, her hand gestures sharp and precise, guiding them around unseen patrol routes seconds before guards would appear. At one junction, she stopped dead, holding up a fist. She pointed to a high corner where a tiny, almost invisible red light blinked. Microdrone, motion and thermal activated, she whispered. From another pouch, she pulled a small, flat disc and held it up. A faint blue light pulsed from it once. The drone's red, I went dark. Mini EMP. It'll reboot in 90 seconds. Go! They moved faster now, deeper into the rig's metallic guts. As they rounded a corner, a figure emerged from the shadows, rifle coming up. Before anyone else could react, Echo's suppressed pistol was out. There were 2 soft thumps, and the guard crumpled to the floor, his surprise still etched on his face. She didn't even break stride. Hex gave her a look of profound admiration. Damn, Echo, you're faster than you used to be. You get rusty if you don't practice, she replied without a hint of smile. They were a ghost squad, flowing through the arteries of the rig, guided by the one person who knew its secrets. The other SEALs moved with the confidence of men who knew they were being led by the best. They were no longer just following a consultant. They were following a legend in her own hunting ground. They ascended to the main platform, emerging into a vast, open area cluttered with shipping containers, stacked like a child's forgotten blocks. The rain had intensified, drumming a chaotic rhythm on every metal surface. The air was electric with tension. It was too quiet. The ambient hum of the rig's machinery was gone. Something's wrong. Hex breathed, his rifle sweeping the towering gantries above them. The generators are offline. It's a trap, Echo stated, her voice flat. They cut the power to funnel us here. Before the words had fully left her lips, the night exploded. Muzzle flashes erupted from a dozen points of darkness high above, from catwalks, from behind cranes, from the windows of the central command tower. A hailstorm of bullets ripped through the air, chewing into the containers around them, sending sparks and ricochets screaming into the night. Ambush! Contact all sides! Thorne yelled, diving for the meager cover of a large container. The team scattered, returning fire, but they were caught in a perfect kill box. The enemy had every angle, every line of sight. Crossfire from elevated positions pinned them down, turning the maze of containers into a death trap. Any attempt to retreat would expose them completely. Admiral, we are compromised, pinned down in a multi-axis ambush. Thorne barked into his comms, his voice strained over the cacophony of gunfire. Kincaid's voice came back, tense and crackling with static. The squall has been upgraded to a tropical storm. QRF is grounded, Thorne. Air support is a no-go. You are on your own. Can you hold your position? Negative. We won't last 10 minutes out here. Hex yelled, firing a controlled burst at a muzzle flash. Bullets peppered the steel wall, just inches from his head. They were being systematically dismantled. Panic, the SEAL's most ancient enemy, began to creep into the edges of the fight. But Echo was calm. While the others were returning fire, she was moving, a low shadow flitting between points of cover, her eyes scanning the architecture of the trap. She wasn't looking at the shooters. She was looking at the structure of the kill box itself. She was counting shots, mapping firing lanes, processing the chaos into data. She slid in next to Thorn, her voice cutting through his focus. They're not trying to kill us. Not yet. They're hurting us. What are you talking about? He shouted over the din. This is suppression, she said, pointing toward the main command building that formed one wall of the courtyard. They're keeping our heads down while their assault team moves to flank us. They want to collapse the box. She looked at him, her eyes gleaming with a terrifying intensity in the strobing light of gunfire. So we don't let them. She pointed to the main entrance of the command building, a reinforced steel door currently being stitched with automatic fire. We go in there. Thorn stared at her as if she were insane. That's a suicide run. That's the heart of their fire. It's the one place they don't expect us to go, she countered, her logic brutal and absolute. They built this trap. We're going to use their own front door to dismantle it from the inside out. Ex-Crouche de Nirby a dit l'échange. Il n'a pas hésité. Vous l'avez entendu. Tir de couverture. Sur la porte principale. Faites du bruit. It was a moment of pure, instinctual trust. The team shifted their fire, unleashing a hellacious volley at the command tower, creating a momentary storm of their own. Go! Thorn yelled. Echo was already moving. She sprinted across the exposed ground, a fleeting shadow against the deluge of enemy fire. Bullets sparked on the ground around her, but she moved with an impossible, weaving grace. She reached the door, slapped a high-yield breaching charge onto it, and dove aside as the world turned into white noise and shrapnel. The trap was about to be flipped. The explosion ripped the steel door from its hinges, sending it spinning into the building's interior. Smoke and dust billowed out, thick and choking. Before the debris had even settled, Echo was inside, pistol up, moving into the darkness. The SEALs poured in after her, a wave of disciplined violence, immediately establishing a defensive perimeter just inside the doorway. Now what? Thorn demanded, his ears ringing. Now we become the ghosts they think they are, Echo said. She led them away from the main lobby, down a dark, narrow maintenance corridor. She stopped at a ventilation grate on the wall. This leads to the central shaft. It runs vertically through all 5 levels. Without another word, Hex and another SEAL pried the grate open. The space inside was cramped and dark. One by one, they squeezed in, following Echo up a series of service ladders inside the shaft, their movements muffled by the ongoing storm and the fading sounds of the firefight outside. The pirates on the gantries were still firing into an empty kill box, completely unaware that their prey was now inside the walls, climbing up behind them. They emerged on the top level, in a small, dark utility closet. Echo pressed her ear to the door, listening. She held up 3 fingers, then pointed in different directions. She drew a quick diagram on her dusty glove. 3 shooters positioned on the rooftop access catwalk just outside. She looked at Hex and 2 other SEALs, tapped her chest, then theirs, and pointed to the door. The hunt was on. They burst out, a synchronized whirlwind of motion. The pirates, their attention still focused on the courtyard below, never stood a chance. Suppressed weapons coughed, and the 3 shooters crumpled without making a sound. The hunters had become the hunted. From their new, elevated position, the SEALs had a clear view of the remaining ambushers on the surrounding catwalks. Pick your targets, Echo commanded, her voice a cold whisper on the comms. Make them count. What followed was a masterclass in marksmanship. The SEALs, guided by Echo's target designations, systematically dismantled the enemy ambush from above and behind. In less than 2 minutes, the storm of gunfire that had pinned them down was replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the wind and the rain. Threat neutralized, Thorn reported, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and awe. We're moving to secure the HVT. They found him in a reinforced communications room, the door secured by a heavy mechanical lock. As Hex prepared a small breaching charge, Echo pushed him aside. From her pack, she took out a thin, flexible tube and a small canister. She pressed the tube against the lock. A blast of supercooled nitrogen hissed out, frosting the entire mechanism in an instant. She gave it a sharp tap with the butt of her pistol, and the frozen tumblers shattered internally. The lock clicked open. Inside, the HVT, a pale, terrified engineer, was frantically trying to destroy a laptop. He froze when the door opened, his eyes wide with fear. He looked past the heavily armed SEALs, and his gaze landed on Echo. A flicker of horrified recognition crossed his face. "You," he whispered, the single word trembling in the air. "They said you were dead." Echo didn't reply. She simply stepped forward, secured his hands with a zip tie, and pushed him toward Hex. "Package is secure. Let's go home." Their exfiltration was cut short by the sound of heavy engines roaring from the base of the rig. Headlights cut through the rain below. "Reinforcements. They've blocked our only way out," a SEAL shouted, just as Kincaid's voice came over the comms to confirm their fears, that they were surrounded. Echo was already moving toward a nondescript section of the floor. "They've blocked their way out," she corrected. She knelt and pulled up a section of grated flooring, revealing not wiring or pipes, but a recessed, watertight hatch with a single, unlabeled lever. The SEALs stared in disbelief. Thorne looked at her, bewildered. "What is that?" Echo looked up, a faint, almost invisible smile on her lips as she pulled the lever. A low hiss of equalizing pressure filled the air. "I built the back door." The debriefing room aboard the USS Dauntless was thick with a silence that felt heavier than the storm still raging outside. The rescued engineer was being treated in the med bay. The SEAL team was accounted for, and the pirate syndicate's leadership had been shattered. By all metrics, the mission was a resounding success. But Admiral Kincaid wasn't looking at the mission reports. He was looking at Echo. She sat at the far end of the long table, nursing a cup of coffee, her posture as relaxed as if she'd just finished a morning jog. The silver streak in her hair seemed to shine a little brighter under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Target secure, 0 casualties on our side," Commander Thorne stated, officially closing the report. "It was a flawed plan, sir. We walked into a buzzsaw. We wouldn't have made it out without her." Kincaid steepled his fingers, his gaze never leaving Echo. "I'm done with evasions, Thorne. I want to know who she is. Not a call sign. I want to know who I had on my ship, operating outside my chain of command." Hex Riley leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm, filling the room. "Sir, we told you. She's the one who came back from Operation Sandviper." Kincaid nodded slowly. "I read the after-action report. What was left of it? It said the lone survivor was a combat engineer who managed to evade the enemy for 3 weeks before being extracted. It never mentioned." He trailed off, looking at her. Echo finally looked up, meeting his gaze directly. Her eyes were clear and steady. "That's because there was no lone survivor, Admiral. The report was sanitized to hide the truth." She took a slow sip of her coffee. There was no Operation Sandviper. The room went utterly still. Thorne and Hex exchanged a look. They knew the legend, but not this. "What are you talking about?" Kincaid demanded. 16 men went in. 16 men were sent to their deaths by bad intel. Echo corrected him, her voice devoid of emotion. "They weren't an operational team. They were bait. And I was the trap. My mission was to go in alone, let the warlord's forces expose themselves by wiping out the SEAL team, and then dismantle his entire network from the inside. The brass never thought a single operator could do it. They were wrong." She paused, letting the horrific truth sink in. There was no operation. There was just me. The weight of her words settled over Kincaid. He thought of the file, the ghost story of a mission so secret it was practically a myth. He finally understood. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the entire operation. A ghost who hunted other ghosts. He stood up, the authority in his voice replaced by a deep, profound respect. "You have skills we need. A name, a proper rank. You could write your own ticket. Command your own unit. You've earned it 100 times over." Echo stood as well, giving him a faint, sad smile. She walked toward the door, pausing as she passed him. "Ghosts don't have rosters, Admiral." With that, she was gone, her footsteps fading down the corridor, leaving behind a room full of stunned officers and a legend that felt more real than ever. Kincaid stood there for a long moment. Then, he walked to his personal terminal, entered his highest level clearance code, and found the temporary digital file that had been created for Echo. It contained nothing but her call sign and a single, grainy satellite image of the oil rig. He stared at it. Then his finger hovered over the keyboard. He hit delete. The file vanished without a trace. He understood now. The most dangerous person in the world isn't the one at the top of the command chain. It's the one who isn't on the list at all. If this story of a hidden hero kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales of the legends who operate in the shadows. Now, we have to ask, should a hero like Echo stay in the shadows to be more effective, or should she be brought into the light and given the honor she deserves? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and please, comment with respect for all opinions. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to you.